This CPOC Commissioners meeting is hereby called to order. This is January 23rd, 2025. The time is now, let me check, 6:15 p.m. I am the interim chair of the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, Hassan Bennett, and I will be facilitating this meeting. This meeting was properly advertised pursuant. This Citizens Police Oversight Commission meeting was properly advertised pursuant to the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act. And with that, I will begin to call roll. Commissioners, when I say your name, please acknowledge yourself by saying here or present. We will start with Commissioner Hakeem P.A.
Present.
Commissioner Hakeem P.A. is president. Commissioner Melanie DeBose.
I'm here.
Commissioner Melanie DeBose is here. Commissioner John Solomon.
I'm present.
Commissioner John Solomon is present. Next, we will move on to Commissioner Business. Has everyone reviewed tonight's meeting agenda? Anyone that didn't review tonight, I'll do it like this. Anyone that didn't review tonight's meeting agenda, please speak up now. With that being said, do I hear a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move that the meeting agenda for January 23rd be approved.
Does anyone second Commissioner Melanie DeBose's motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
John Solomon here. I'll second.
Commissioner John Solomon seconds tonight's meeting agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And with that, the ayes have won it. Next on to Commissioner agenda or Commissioner Business, we will be approving December meeting minutes. If anyone did not get a chance to review December's meeting agenda, please speak up now. With that being said, do I hear a motion?
I move that are you referring to the minutes?
Yes, I apologize. December meeting minutes.
I move that the meeting for December 12th and the 19th, I believe, be approved.
Does anyone second Commissioner Melanie Elder DeBose motion to approve both December meeting minutes?
Commissioner PA seconds the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
With that being said, I will now hand the meeting off to our Executive Director, Ms. Tanya McClary, for agency business. Ms. McClary?
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to see you all on this cold evening. We are going to talk about some of the things that have been going on since our last meeting. Next slide, please. So the Citizens Police Oversight Commission, the mission is to oversee and investigate the conduct, policies, and practices of the Philadelphia Police Department. Currently, we receive complaints of police misconduct. We audit and monitor internal affairs investigations and police disciplinary processes. We sit and vote on PBI panels at police discipline hearings. We conduct oversight of police shootings, analyze police data, develop policy recommendations and report, and engage in outreach and training. And I always like to remind the public why civilian oversight is important. It protects human rights. It promotes constitutional policing. It increases public confidence and trust in the police. It builds bridges between law enforcement and the public. It supports effective policing, ensures greater accountability, and enhances risk management. And I think going forward, I'm probably going to take each one of these and highlight some of the examples of those things, because it's one thing to say it on a piece of paper and on this beautiful PowerPoint, but it's another thing for people to understand, like, what does protecting human rights really look like in the police oversight context? So what does it really look like to promote constitutional policing? So starting next month, each meeting, I'm going to take one of these and kind of bring it to life for people so that you really get a sense of what we're talking about. Next slide. So I'm really excited. I'm going to do this slide with Danny Guy, who is our administrative director. We are in budget season. We are in budget season here in the city of Philadelphia. And so we had a wonderful opportunity to present our FY26, which would be from July 25th to June 26th budget request to the finance, procurement, and the mayor's office. CPOC provided justifications for program expansion and plans new hires for FY26. And of course, some of those new hires would be, for example, more investigators when we get that opportunity. And so I'm really excited about what we presented. And I'm going to turn it over to Danny to talk about the historical significance of that.
Yeah, this is a really big deal. This is important because CPOC has never sort of had a meeting like this with finance and the budget department. There were other individuals, as we mentioned, procurement and people from the mayor's office. In the past, we just submitted our sort of request to MDO and they sort of just threw it in the stack of all the multiple departments that they do. So this was really important and also is a big signifier that we are moving to separate our budget to be truly independent and move away from MDO. In this discussion, we also talked about reallocating some funds, which is, I think, they were very receptive to. So should CPOC not get any increases, which hopefully, knock on wood, we do get increases, but should that happen and we get flat funding, we have some creative solutions and ways to reallocate funds in our budget right now that I think can easily be done and would not sacrifice any of our services and would allow us to hire a few more staff as well. So even if things don't change, this reallocation could really help us continue to expand in the next fiscal year.
Okay. And one of the things that we did ask for, which might not be on the top of people's minds, because they might say, well, what is the role of CPOC, is that we put in a request to have some funding for next year, for the 2026, for all the stuff. So the cinquentennial, the FIFA, because we all know that when these major events come to your cities, there's an increased police presence. And so that means we need to have increased CPOC presence. And so I just wanted to highlight that for the commissioners and the community, because that might be something where people were like, wow, I never thought about it. I didn't know how you guys would factor into FIFA and the help me with that, the cinquentennial that's coming up. So, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we start to make those asks to be included at the table as people are starting to make plans for those major events in the city.
Awesome. Was there any questions from the commissioners?
Commissioner John Solomon, do you have any questions? Take that as a no. Commissioner Hakeem P.A., do you have any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Elder DeBose, do you have any questions or comments?
I have no questions or comments at this time.
I do have a question. Will CPOC be presenting its budget to City Council?
Yep. The next steps, just to give a little overview of how this works for the city. So the city calls for budget submissions in December, and they get submitted by different departments like ourselves by beginning of January. Then the finance department will meet with those departments, as we just talked about our meeting with them. Then they sort of get together, they work with the mayor's team, they create sort of her master budget, and that comes out in early March. And then once that's released, City Council will hold their budget hearings and sort of people can advocate for changes or what they're going to do with their funding that the mayor has given them. And so that's sort of similar. I believe you came and attended the meeting that was actually where we presented Tanya to City Council and got to talk a little bit about our budget last April. So it will most likely happen same time. I believe that was like mid-April or late April.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Great. I'll move on to the next slide, which is
So
complaints.
we have one more thing, if we
Okay,
can
great.
just hold that. So there was a special request from the commissioners for us to talk a little bit about the FOP contracts and the term sheets. So I'm going to share this presentation with Catherine Twigg, who is general counsel for the commission. And so what I want to say, and I said a little bit of this at our meeting a few weeks ago, is that at our last meeting, I shared that CPOC's recommendations for independent investigations into police misconduct had been incorporated into the city's proposed terms, which was awesome. And we want to thank again, I want to take as many opportunities as I can to really thank our community and our stakeholders in the city, like city council, that really fought for us and really made it very clear that they wanted to see us on the term sheets. And so we haven't had a lot of regular meetings with the city since that time about the upcoming contract, but we remain open and eager to collaborate with them. They know that we are a stakeholder who works closely with the police and collaborates with them and collects rigorous data. And so I'm hoping that they really see our value even beyond the ask for independent investigations. And we have a lot of value that we add. There are several things on the FOP's term sheets that are very concerning. And CPOC could add some expertise and some ideas around some of these ideas. So I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Twigg to kind of highlight some of the things in the FOP contract that are giving us concern, and she can put in perspective why CPOC has those concerns.
Thank you so much, Director McClary. And thank you, commissioners, for this question. So as many of you will remember, the proposals from the FOP and the city, who are the two parties to the police employment contract, they exchanged those proposals at the end of December. We wanted to highlight a couple of proposals from the FOP that we feel are concerning, that would undermine transparency. And as you all know, transparency is a central part of CPOC's mission to promote transparency at PPD. But as a reminder, at this time, these are just proposals. Nothing is being implemented right now. This is the beginning of a process that involves negotiation and ultimately involves an interest arbitration panel listing the evidence and argument from both sides about what the right contract terms are and then making a decision. So we're still quite a few months away from that. But I did want to highlight, there are 4 proposals that we wanted to draw your attention to. These are generally in part 2, and I'll stop and say thanks to Danny, who dropped a link in the chat to the FOP website where you can see the FOP's proposed terms and also the city's proposed terms. So go ahead and check those out if you haven't yet been able to. So we're looking at part 2, which is recruiting and retention, officer quality of life in the FOP's proposed terms. And then I failed to document this section, but I think it might be section 4, it's the last section, about the grievance and arbitration process reforms, including the Police Board of Inquiry. So starting with the ones in section 2, the FOP has suggested an end to releasing officer names after a police shooting. So this would reverse a change that has been in effect for many years. I've heard nearly a decade, which the FOP has notably already sued over. That suit was appealed, and they ultimately lost their case. This proposed change would also be a significant setback for transparency and accountability, which further undermines public trust in the police. The public has a right to know about serious uses of force among the police department. The second one is a prohibition on the city releasing any police personnel records in response to right to know requests. This suggestion does not follow state law. Legislators in Harrisburg who represent and are accountable to all Pennsylvanians have determined the appropriate standard for the release of public records. That's a law that strikes an important balance between the public right to access information about government and understand what's going on in government and hold their elected officials accountable with the protection of confidential or sensitive or personally identifiable information, right? So that's already built into the law. There are exceptions that require redactions or denying certain records if they can't be released. The FOP's lawyers here are really trying to create a special new right to know standard that would just apply in Philadelphia and just for police officers, which again would undermine transparency and accountability. And then finally in that section, PPD should, one of their proposals is that PPD should not release any personnel records related to disciplinary investigations, disciplinary charges, or final and binding discipline imposed upon a police officer to other agencies in the city. So notably, they include the district attorney and CPOC in there. This is another issue that's already been litigated and lost by the FOP in court. Some of the records they're trying to hide in this section are actually public records that any civilian has the right to request and would be provided by the city under our current law. And beyond that, other discipline records have to be provided to the district attorney or other agencies by state, local, or federal law, including to uphold the constitutional rights of Philadelphians. So while we understand the FOP's attorneys are pushing for officer privacy here, most of these suggestions go above and beyond, first of all, what's currently lawful and necessary, but also what's reasonable, I think, in this context. And then the final section, just wanted to draw your attention to, is that they have proposed a number of terms related to grievance arbitration and the police board of inquiry. These are both portions of the discipline process that we can take questions about if people have any. But the thing I wanted to highlight is that CPOC plays a crucial role in the police board of inquiry process right now. So currently we review charges before cases are referred to that board. And then we sit as one person on that 3-person panel and vote on police discipline, including whether the misconduct happened and what discipline should be recommended in each case. So we've been collecting data on PBI hearings and thoroughly researching the grievance arbitration process. So we remain very interested in providing input to the city and the panel about these during these upcoming negotiations. So overall, we don't agree with these proposed terms. We're very concerned by some of them. But I do want to say that we see a potential for some shared goals. CPOC is always ready to work with any other stakeholders to facilitate a more efficient and fair and equitable discipline process. And we have some great ideas about how the process can be improved to be better for individual officers, to be fairer and more equitable and faster for those individual officers. And so we, are eager to engage in that process further. That is everything I wanted to share. Do we have any questions from commissioners for Tanya or myself?
No questions?
No question from me.
Attorney Twig, I appreciate it. We definitely had questions. This dug deeper than the questions that we had. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the clarity. I appreciate the transparency. Thank you.
Absolutely. And this is something that we'll keep the commissioners and the public updated on. The timeline is going to take a couple months and we don't know exactly when certain things are going to happen, but we are certainly on top of this and happy to answer anyone's questions. So I think we can go back to the slides then, if you're ready, Chair.
Are we done with the contract, the terms?
That was all I had prepared. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So we're going to turn it over to the complaint. I want to say complaint division, but that's soon to come, So
yeah, these are our complaints for, we have our report for December. It is hasn't been put on our website yet, but will get posted tomorrow morning. We just had to review one last thing. But I'll just sort of go through some basic stuff about the report. So here's some highlights of reports that We know of complaints that we received in the month of December. An officer was handling a traffic control at an intersection where a vehicle accident occurred. The complainant felt that the officer was handling traffic in a hazardous and ineffective manner, yelling at drivers and waving their arms in frustration. The officer's directions were unclear and at one point nearly caused a collision. The officer's behavior was unnecessarily aggressive and seemed to escalate the situation rather than help resolve it. The complainant stated that they previously had been arrested during a street sweep. During this street sweep, the complainant's license to carry and firearm were confiscated. Charges against the complainant because of this arrest were dropped. After they received the news that the charges were dropped, the complainant attempted to retrieve and see the seized firearm, only be told by PPD that they would have to pay a $3,000 to get the firearm back. Complainant decided to purchase a new firearm as it would be cheaper than paying, and to have the firearm returned. The complainant was later pulled over again and yanked, quote unquote, out of the car. The officer searched his car and vehicle and found the new firearm. While transporting the complainant for processing, officers responded to another call for service. The complainant charged for the second arrest were also dropped, but still is considered open in the court system, making it difficult for the individual to get a job and housing. The complainant reported the next complaint reported lack of service by officers from the district after reaching out to them repeatedly over 6 days regarding a vehicle that was illegally parked on their street in front of their home. On 3 occasions, officers came out but failed to issue any tickets or citations for their vehicles, even though it was illegally parked on the sidewalk. This shows our demographics for the complaints. In December, we received 19 complaints that we referred to internal affairs. In 2024, so the entire calendar year, we have to date 204 complaints. We're actually working with a list from internal affairs to reconcile all of our complaints against theirs and make sure that that number is accurate. So that number might actually go up a little bit in our annual report, but that's what we have to date when we ran the numbers. And this just shows a breakdown of both the gender and race for the entire year to date as pulled by all of our data. This next slide is the specific 19 complaints that we referred in the month of December, and sort of just a breakdown of those. Even though that complaint, it looks like says November, it still, I think, is the accurate thing. That's just a typo error. On this next slide, we have the allegations. So this is broken down, all the allegations for the entire year to date. And as we always say, one complaint can have several allegations. And so this is just the breakdown. Lack of service is the highest level of complaint that we see allegation-wise. And then second would be department violations, which we go down to break down in the next slide. This shows sort of PPD directives, as well as improper stops, improper cease and seizure, improper arrests, and department violations can be a wide variety of violating directives, violating certain types of policy that is listed for the police. On the next slide, this breaks down the zip codes of where all of our complaints have happened this year. And so you can just see, and again, these are just complaints that CPOC received and referred to internal affairs. This does not account for all complaints for the city, as any complaints directly filed with PPD would not be part of our data set. On this next slide, this is a breakdown of the districts. As we had mentioned previously in a previous month, we're hoping to now report districts each quarter. So this is the quarter of October to December 2024, and the breakdown of those complaints by districts. So a little bit more specific breakdown of the districts. And then on this next slide, it shows the entire year to date for 2024. So we'll do, it'll be in April, we'll do a report on January, February, and March, and we'll start doing those quarterly of this breakdown of districts each quarter, just so we can give some more information and try to report out more data. And I believe that's the last of my slides. Any questions?
And let me say something really quick before we go to questions too. One of the things that we're hoping to do is that, as Danny was saying, right now, this is just our data. I'm hoping to be able to start reporting out on also PP's data so that people in the city get the full breadth of how many complaints are coming in a month across both of the agencies. So we're not there yet. We're talking with PPD about getting those numbers, but I think it would be really important for the public to see the amount of complaints that are coming in every month regarding possible police misconduct.
Thank you for that, Danny and Director McCleary. That was going to be my question as to whether or not there was a path forward, especially because we know from articles that have been recently written, PPD is really resistant to that level of accountability or transparency. So thank you for, moving in that direction. And if anything, if there's anything that we can do as the commissioners or urge the community to do, please let us know.
You.
Thank you. Alrighty, I'll move on to pass it over to Janine.
Thank you, Danny. Hi, everyone. Good evening. For this month's slides, I decided to put together some more informational slides as opposed to slides I have shared in the past recent months that are real data heavy and really intensely diving into the audits that my team has been doing. I wanted to make sure I spent some time explaining the change to the division that has happened. We've moved from being the auditing and monitoring unit to the auditing policy and research division. I know we've sort of briefly touched on that in recent meetings, but I wanted to get a little more into what that actually means for the work of the staff in this division and just talk through some plans for the year of calendar year 2025 and sort of speak to my vision for what our unit can hopefully accomplish this calendar year. So some of the big changes that have happened now that we are this new division, monitoring is a function of the investigations division now. So monitoring currently is comprised of a CPOC staff member, coordinating with an IED investigator to attend interviews for investigations related to complaints against police, and our staff member can work with the investigator to share information and talk about the case as it unfolds. So that function was previously envisioned to be in auditing and monitoring, but as we really worked through what that means, we figured that it's so closely related to investigations that having investigations take that on made a lot of sense. So that function is now fully housed within the investigations division. The auditing policy and research division will continue to do our CAP audits as we have been. We will just be adding additional policy related work to our plates. So the slides I'll go through will talk more about what that means. And I just want to highlight again that we are still a very small team. We have 3 staff members plus a director. So auditing takes up a lot of time, but we're trying to figure out how we can squeeze in some more policy work and really expand the breadth of the work that our team handles. So we can go to the next slide. So just to briefly touch on auditing, as I do each month. So what is auditing at CPOC? We do our in-depth reviews of case file materials provided by PPD for complaints against police. So we use a standard series of questions to assess each individual case consistently. We have 10 business days to complete our review for each case that we receive and notify the police department if we had feedback on the investigation. We send any specific recommendations for each case back to internal affairs, and then we track their response to our feedback and our recommendations. And this allows for the civilian oversight perspective to be included throughout the investigative process before the investigation is fully concluded and signed off on. So plans for the new year related to auditing. We hope to publish a report with all the results from the first few months of this live auditing process, as well as the other audits that we did earlier in 2024. And we're going to continue to conduct our audits, collect data, and report on those audits as we do them. So we received a batch of audits just last week, and they're continuing to roll in. So that is ongoing, and we'll keep reporting on that as we're able to. You can go to the next slide. Thanks, Danny. So I wanted to spend some time talking about what exactly policy work is, since this is something that we are adding onto our plate. So policy work can be a pretty broad world, but I wanted to highlight some pieces of it that I think I'm hoping to sort of bring into the work that the division does. So policy work relates to sort of observing trends, prioritizing, and assessing impact. So say through an audit, through the audits that the division is doing, we notice a certain trend, like car stops occurring because of tinted windows. So that's a trend we see. We can think through, is there something bigger there that we can work on? Is there some project here that we can take a look at and understand what policy is at play with the police department, and what can CPOC do to understand that policy and maybe make recommendations about it? So that would involve research, designing a project, determining whether it's even feasible to do, assessing intended or unintended outcomes of a project. There's a lot of thinking through big picture, what a policy project is meant to accomplish, and maybe some things that could happen as a result that you aren't necessarily predicting. These types of projects involve a lot of collaboration with relevant stakeholders and colleagues. So collaborating with relevant staff or leadership at the police department to obtain any data we might need. Collaborating with relevant community groups, talking to the public defender's office perhaps, or coordinating with other colleagues within CPOC to understand what they're seeing about this specific topic and if they have any input. And then from there, project execution, collecting data, analyzing data, developing recommendations, and having a product to show for all the work that went into it. So sometimes that involves designing and tracking implementation for recommendations we might make. I can reference back to the Police Board of Inquiry reports that our office did. We did a lot of research and data collection there, and then made some recommendations for how to modernize and change processes within the disciplinary hearing system there. But making those recommendations is only the first piece. We really had to work on designing ways to track any data that we would want to report on, and then following up with the police department and understanding how they were implementing changes, and really staying on top of certain things to make sure that reforms that everyone agreed on were actually being enacted and implemented. Of course, a big piece of any work we do will be publication. So making sure we put any results, information, recommendations, or responses that we get to those recommendations out to the public. Sometimes you can spend a lot of time on a project like this, and it might end in a way you aren't expecting. Maybe no recommendations come out of it, or you have to pivot and instead just stick to more of an informational explainer. But we always want to be able to be transparent about that and share as much information as we can with the public about the work that we're doing. And of course, data collection and analysis will always be a big piece of this. We want to be smart about that and be able to say really informed things, make informed database recommendations to the department when we can. So something that's really exciting about this type of work is, I know from my personal experience, some of our greatest progress and achievements at CPOC have been made through policy projects. I mentioned the PBI reform project. That was a part 1 and a part 2. It started in 2020 and is ongoing. So these can be long-term efforts that take a lot of persistence, but I think we can find really great success through these. We build really good relationships and are able to become experts in this area of policing in Philadelphia. The point of the PBI project was to take a big process like the discipline process and take a holistic view and then pinpoint areas for reform and track data over time. So it's very intentional, but again, very time intensive, very labor intensive. And at this point, we have a lot of different staff members who help out with it. So you never really know if a policy project is going to be short-term or long-term, but however it shakes out, I think we definitely have the capacity to take it on. We can go to the next slide. So to speak a little bit more to some other plans for 2025, some topics that we may come across have more of a short-term need for a response. So if there's a certain current event that happens, we may, or a concern that we receive from residents in the course of our interactions with them, then we may want to do a quick hit sort of explainer piece to say what information we have that's more immediately needed. So I had some examples here of projects from the last couple of years when there was a big conversation about drone use within the Philly Police Department. A former policy analyst put together a quick informational bulletin of sorts to talk through what drones are, how PPD uses them, or how they may or may not plan to use them, just to get some quick facts out about the topic. So that's something else we'll try to take on when we can, as needed. And with the help of our outreach and social media team, we can produce information like that for the public to help explain these police policies and operations when there's a need for that. So there's links to these examples, and we hope to put some of these things out in 2025 when we can and when they're needed. And so I wanted to just address, what does the addition of policy and research mean for the work of the division going forward? So we'll continue to do the CAP audits, as I mentioned before. What's great is that our audits that we've been doing have consistently generated ideas for projects and trends and themes, but now we can more formally operationalize these into informational things like blog posts, explainers, and longer term projects. We'll continue to produce these explainers for the public, and I think it will be a process, a learning process of determining our team's capacity and balancing the audits with policy work. And this will continue to develop depending on staffing levels and how that all shakes out. But it's a big, there's a lot that we can do. There's no shortage of project ideas. There's no shortage of work that can be done. It's just figuring out how to prioritize that and work it into the work that we're already doing. So it's an exciting change. And I think we can do a lot of really great work. So I think, are there any other slides for me, Danny? Felt like such a good conclusion. I forgot I had more. Okay. So there's a few projects that are already in the works for 2025. We had spoken a while back about developing a body-worn camera compliance audit project. The goal of this would be to review body-worn camera footage created by PPD officers and assess it for compliance with the department's body-worn camera policy. So determining if officers are turning their cameras on when they're supposed to, if they're keeping them on for the duration of an incident, if they're properly labeling the video files once they're finished with them, things of that nature. So we recently have taken some time to revisit this project. We spent a long time developing workflows to make sure we could get all of the information we needed to do this project. We've briefed the police department on the update to our project plan for this, and we are hoping, we may have even requested some of this data already. So the plan currently is to audit 4 districts to check for compliance with the body-worn camera directive, and then to repeat that audit a few months down the line. So say if we started with the 18th district and we audited their footage for the month of December 2024, in the spring, maybe we would come back and reassess. And after delivering some findings to their leadership, see if they've improved their compliance with the body-worn camera directive. So it's a little more targeted. We picked these specific directives that are outlined in red, districts that are outlined in red. So we picked the 15th, the 24th, the 22nd, and the 18th. We picked those based on the volume of complaints that CPOC has received. We wanted to target some districts that had high activity. So those are the things we were looking at when we were trying to decide where to start with this project. So it will be about delivering findings to relevant police leadership, coming back to that district a few months later and see if there's been any improvement in the metrics that we're looking at. So that's really exciting that we've been able to re-envision this project and make it a little bit more targeted and hopefully come up with some good results that we can share with the public and with the department. So that hopefully is kicking off shortly. And of course, we will release any information we can once we have it. Additionally, for 2025, also related to body-worn cameras, we have been speaking about this project for quite some time, but it's getting closer to wrapping up. So it is a study related to body-worn cameras. It's a systematic social observation study. So this was undertaken with the help of police She's now a captain, Captain Kelly Robbins of the 1st District. She was previously a lieutenant. She partnered with an academic researcher and came up with a project to assess body-worn camera videos of vehicle stops for procedural justice. So figuring out how to code these videos for officers, displaying the elements of procedural justice. So giving individuals voice during the encounter, explaining the reason for the stop occurring, things of that nature. So an initial article about this study has been accepted for publication and released online. It was released in December. So the link is here. It's in the Police Practice and Research Journal. And the article that was released is doesn't have many findings necessarily, but is meant to be an explainer of the project and is a proof of concept essentially. So it shows that this type of coding work is possible, it is reliable, and can be used by other peers in law enforcement and oversight as an example of the type of research that is possible. So this partnership, I think, has been very exciting and can be a great model for how police departments and oversight bodies can come together to do something really innovative and have some results to show and say something about what's happening in policing in the city. So other articles will be published with the actual findings once all of the coding has been done of these videos. But again, this article is really for information and background on what the project is and what it's meant to accomplish. So that's very exciting that that's been published. And I encourage, it's a little, academic, so it can be a little tough, but we plan to come out with some more plain language version of it so that anyone can just click on our blog and read about it and understand what it is. So as I said before, no shortage of ideas for projects and topics for our division to explore. We'll continue to look at peer agencies for inspiration and methods that we can, model after when we can. And we encourage anyone to reach out with comments, concerns, or ideas so that we can always be responsive to our communities and the work that we're trying to do. So that feels like an ending. So any other slides for me? I don't think so. Okay. If there's any questions from commissioners, I'll be happy to answer what I can. Yeah.
Now you all can see why I promoted her to be over this new division.
I'm just saying anticipating, this is Commissioner Bennett. I'm just saying anticipating the reports from these projects. The last report where the audit, where CPOC audited the complaint process and how many complaints went through and how many fell short, and the reason for complaints not going through was such a eye opener and informative that I'm just waiting for the next report to come on here. And I appreciate you as well as the ARP division. I mean, the APR division. I'm sorry. Does any other commissioner have any questions or comments at this time? No more question and comment? One second, because you guys know what time it is. Before I go into, it's back on me, Danny?
Well, let me say a few more things if I can, Chairman.
Okay.
Great. So just want to give people a couple of just more updates in case people didn't make our first meeting this month, and that the selection of the new commissioners is going forward. The selection panel will be wrapping up those interviews at the end of this month. And then hopefully we'll be scheduling in February the public hearing where people will get to meet the proposed list of candidates. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to at one of our February meetings, be able to let people know when that event will be where they can meet the proposed slate of candidates. Also, just some internal hiring. I just wanted to let the commission know and the public know. We have been without a deputy. I don't think there's ever really been a deputy. director. And so we are in the throes of those interviews. And so hopefully in February or March, we'll be able to announce the very first, I guess, first permanent deputy director for the office. And so it's been wonderful to meet candidates. We've had a vigorous pool of people from across the country that are applying to come here because of the great work of this commission and this office. And so we will keep you guys up to date.
Thank you, Ms.
That's it
McClary.
for me, Chair.
Thank you. And please be advised, our February meetings will take place on February 13th and February 27th. I repeat, our February meetings will be on February 13th and February 27th, and you can pay attention to our social media sites as well as the CPOC website to keep an update on PBI hearings. All right, so it's that time again where we accept public comments. And as I do every meeting, I will be reading the colloquy word by word, so there's no discrepancies. It's always the same thing. So with that being said, let me begin reading the colloquy. We welcome public comment and feedback. Please address your comments to myself as the chair. If you would like to speak, please provide your full name. We will not be unmuting anonymous participants. If you are a member of the media, please identify yourself as such. You can indicate that you would like to speak by raising your hand or sending a request to the meeting host in the chat. You may also submit public comment through the chat. You will have 3 minutes to address the commissioners. I will keep time and notify the board when 3 minutes have elapsed. Any documents or follow-up communications can be submitted to cpoc@phila.gov. That is CPOC, the @ PHILA.gov. Public comments should be limited to the topic covered in this meeting. All public commenters must refrain from offensive language, threats, and or harassments. Participants that violate these instructions will be removed from the meeting. While we welcome your public comments and feedback, commissioners may not be able to respond to your questions or comments during tonight's meeting. Every attempt will be made to follow up by phone or email after the meeting. You can contact CPOC by using the email address I gave above, that is cpoc@phila.gov, or call 215-685-0891. That is 215-685-0891. And with that being said, I now open the floor to public comment.
I don't have anything in the chat or any previously registered comments from our email account. Give it a few, see if no one's raised their hands.
Does anyone have anything to say while we're giving these last few minutes? Well, we're waiting for the public comments. Any commissioners, any staff, anyone?
Chair, I have a very small correction. We do have the PBI dates for February. I wanted to let everyone know they were not ready by the time we approved our agenda. And I put that they were available on our website. That's actually incorrect. They are on our social media. And as the agenda says, please give the CPOC office a call or the police department number that's on the agenda to make sure that it's happening, because they're frequently rescheduled or moved around. But we hope that you'll consider coming to those PBIs. Keep an eye on our social media for the correct dates.
Thank you, Attorney Twigg. And with that being said, Danny, is anyone in the comment section?
I don't see anything, Hassan.
With no one in the comment section, commissioners, do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I move that tonight's meeting be adjourned, having completed the business of CPOC for the day.
Commissioner Elder DeBose has motioned for this meeting to be adjourned. Does anyone second that motion?
Commissioner Solomon, I'll second.
Commissioner Solomon has seconded. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, say aye.
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 And with that being said, this meeting is now adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, you enjoy your evening. It is always a pleasure to come and be informed on the works and happenings of CPOC. Thank you once again. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.